We getting things popping. We getting things popping. Get some people rolling in here. Have us a discussion, yo. Like it's not even showing me. I already got a gift goal. That's wild. I ain't said that. I ain't did that. I don't remember doing that. Let's edit it because I want the donuts. We're gonna do roses. We're gonna do 50 of them. It's gonna be beautiful. We're gonna set them. We're gonna pin it. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. I am strategically late, just like I always am. I was busy having boy dinner. I was busy having boy dinner. It was great. It was a lovely time. Y'all already know I had tofu. Had it cooked in a I appreciate the roses already. Getting the little gift goal knocked out, getting the shares and the likes and the loves. I can't even see how many folks is in here. TikTok already just disenfranchising the fuck out of me. I don't know what I'm gonna do about that. So if men aren't good, seek truth questions. Let's get the likes up. Seek truth questions. I see you in the queue. We're gonna get the likes up to probably dinner plate and headset ready. We're gonna get the likes up to probably about 4 or 5K before we accept anybody. That'll help us get pushed out to the algorithm. I'm sorry about that. I need to do a better job. Why would any woman help a man who says men aren't good? Well, maybe come back around because now it's about 100 folks. That's good, about 100 folks. Let's go back and read that comment. Why would any woman help a man who says men aren't good? Men aren't usually good people. They just aren't, you know? So we're going to, if y'all want to follow and like, we're going to bring Jay up. Jay and I are going to have this conversation. We're going to try to invite some, most humans are good. Aren't good. Exactly. Yeah. You know, yeah. And if you can't realize that and know that we need to move around better in society, then I would say that you have like a lot of decolonizing to do, you know? So what's going on, Jay?
My bad there. Wait, hold up. There we go. What's good, brother?
Yeah, it is. Man, we're just making an evening out of this and trying to get us a little conversation going.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I am I'm glad you're here to meet me. I know that some of the people in the chat might not know, but this is something that Jay and I are going to try to be doing more of, is making a background specific, talking about men and some of the societal issues that we face and things that we need to break down and work on constructively as men to show up better in society, right?
That's absolutely the goal. I mean, and as men, we should be talking to each other about these things, rather than jumping in women's platforms and trying to redirect the conversations.
Correct. And so somebody highlighted earlier in another Discord when I put up something about this background, they said that it's kind of contradicting that men have to decenter other men, but we're going to have a live about it. So I just wanted to touch on that topic, that it's not that we're centering things up. We're talking about men's issues and highlighting some of the problems that we need, but this is not the actual work. This is a discussion about taking the work and running with it inside of your day-to-day life, right? So as we move around, that's where this conversation is going to help alleviate. This is a woman's platform. It's definitely not the case. It's a people's platform for sure. Somebody in the comments.
Yeah, I've seen that. And you know what? There's probably somebody who would like a bit of attention for the night. So, hey, you got some attention. How about that?
Right, there you go. There you go. You want to bring up somebody at Seek Truth Question?
Oh, hey, it's all good with me.
All right. Let's split the box up like that. There we go. What's going on, Seek Truth Question?
Hey there, I just saw your background. It looked interesting and wanted to get your side of it first before necessarily responding.
Well, do you know what centering other men means?
Centering other men. Yeah, I'd need more context on what you're talking about.
Like you care about the opinions of other men, you live life for other men, you seek the validation and approval of men, things like that, right? You move, you do things.
Man,
Yeah.
their life.
Oh, you.
See, your service is nervous, good brother. Your service is nervous.
Yeah. Are you there? Uh-oh. Yeah, you wanna look like the man. You wanna discuss like getting women in front of men. You don't do it for the actual woman. You do it for the approval of other men. You want your car to be a certain way for other men. You want to brag, basically.
You're talking about shallow, materialistic things. I was thinking about like, yeah, there's certain men I look up to only because I know they're good men. I see them as fathers, or I see them as good businessmen, or I just know them personally. They're good friends, and I can rely on them to go to if I need the opinions of somebody that I trust about something I'm going through. That's kind of what I think.
So here's the thing. In preparation for this tonight, I did do a bit of note taking. For a bit of note taking. So, give me 1 second. There we go. And in that note taking, I want to give you three options, and you tell me which one you want to go with. So, when we're talking about decentering men, the three options I want to give you right now is in relationships. I'm pretty sure you can still hear me. If not, I repeat it. Okay, in relationships, in the workplace, or in culture and media, which one would you like to tackle first?
Let's go culture and media.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So, the idea of decentering men as it comes to culture and media, you will consider how male-centered narratives in media and culture can be decentered by amplifying women's voices, their stories, and their experiences. Being that we exist in a patriarchy, even with things with culture and media, a lot of times, even the perspectives of women in these stories are written by men. I play video games for the longest, and we're just getting to the point now to where, that's changing a little bit. But for the longest, the women characters in video games, especially fighting video games, their attire made no sense. It didn't even make any sense historically for even some of the points that they were trying to make, whether it be, a warrior from a certain period, right? It was the midriff was often out, all the chest was out. It was very much over sexualized. And when you looked at all the people who were making the games, they were men. So when we're talking about decentering men in culture and media,
Those
that's
men
one way to
probably
look at it.
never talk to a single woman in their life. Those men probably stay inside. They don't actually go out and meet people. They're focused on making their games. That have big boob women that they fantasize about, but they can't even muster up the courage to talk to them.
I think that you missed the whole point of that transaction there.
I might have missed something.
And wait, and
But
here's the
I'm
thing,
not saying
Six.
I didn't absorb things and that's my only takeaway. But that was just something that came up.
And here's the thing, Six. What I'm saying about that is I'm not even disagreeing so much with what you just said. But when you assert that these men aren't actually engaging with women in their day to day, you're also going back to the idea that they're also decentering men. Because if you can't just engage with other women just on a basic conversational level, then that's a deep problem with what masculinity has presented you.
Sure, it's insecurity, it's rejection, and if they want to be liked, but they don't know how, they haven't been taught to even have a conversation like that, some of them. But no, I agree with, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to get your guys' stance completely, try to see out your perspective.
So before Jeff grabbed it back, what I would say to sum up the overall idea, if you will, decentering men in this idea is decentering men the way patriarchy and masculinity has given it to us. Because patriarchy itself, masculinity is its offspring, right? And the way it was given to us, the tenets associated with what masculinity is, when we are talking about decentering men, we're talking about decentering these ideas that just don't work anymore. Not only do they not work for women, especially the men who are engaging in any activities with women, but they don't work for men either. Patriarchy is failing us as well. When you look at the self-unaliving rates for men, they're through the roof. And they're not even starting at just when you get into adulthood. They're starting between the ages of 13 and 17. It goes down a little bit in the 20s. And oddly enough, jumps up after 35. So there's something that we are not talking about as men, and not only not talking about to each other, but not talking about to ourselves either.
And that's the highlight of the problem. There's been a lot of societal things that have been pushed that are not serving of not only women, children, or any feminine presenting person, but they're also not serving for a majority of men now. They're not serving of us. And that's what we have to, when we decenter other men. And so like here's a good relay of what you did that's a problem. You othered the video game creators. You put them into a category and you said, well, this is what they do because of this is who they are, or whatever the case might be, without humanizing them. And that's what men do majorly. Like you said, there's a couple of wealthy people that you follow. I'm sure that you don't even know them. You just
Wealthy people. I'm talking about my uncle, first of all. And I'm talking about my boss. I'm talking about people I know in my life.
Okay, so you hang out with them every day and you know them super duper personally?
I see my boss multiple times a week. I am very close with my uncle, multiple uncles. Yeah, like I don't like to follow people that I know abstractly, or really look up to people I know abstractly in that way, because I really don't know them. I don't know how they live their life. I don't know their morals. I don't know their values, what their gains, their goals. So
that's good.
Why they do what they do.
At least in your boss's, in your boss's case, he's showing you the side of him that he wants you to see, right? He wants you to assume that he's a good person, or at least believe that he's a good person to some degree, right? But there's still a power imbalance in that relationship, so there's still some of that, right? But at the end of the day, you can't other people, and that's what you did. And you're assuming what other people are doing because of that. And so you're moving in society in that case, because you did it right here on this live. You said those people, the guys that made the video games.
In general, yeah, definitely. In general, I stand by what I say. Not all of them, obviously, but like there's a general trend of male isolation in our culture. And video games and isolation, they go hand in hand, and it's in our male culture. So I'm not surprised that all these men aren't talking to women. I stand by what I said.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Okay, that's fine. But I see it. I talk to men. I'm in men's groups. I've been doing men's groups for years. Speaking of which, when you're saying decentralize the men, are you talking about decentralize what we consider traditional masculinity of, you know, suppressing your emotions until we burst out in anger or violence or, you know, dominance, power over, these kinds of things. You're saying that decentralizing those things or deconstructing those for you is decentralizing the man. Is that what you're saying?
That is what I was speaking of earlier.
Yeah,
The
I
way,
wanted
the
to
way,
respond to that. We went
yeah.
somewhere else, but yeah.
Okay, no, it's okay. The way masculinity has been presented to us, and for a lot of us, we never question it. A lot of us just pick up masculinity and just keep going with it because patriarchy itself is so much a part of us, our day-to-day society, that a lot of us never intentionally step outside and examine it, right? You won't even notice it until you start to look around and truly examine it. So with masculinity itself, you have to think about how many times over history it changed. And what I mean by that, at one point in time, the color pink was a masculine color. Dresses were essentially made for men. Makeup, wigs were made for men. Thongs, even, were made for men. These were all things that were considered masculine. And even in the time when they were made for men, they were only made for a certain subset of men in the society, which showed you that even then patriarchy and masculinity didn't work for all men.
In France or where?
I'm not just friends.
Not just France. But
Not
France.
just friends.
But France.
Not
Okay.
just friends. So when you look at these things, masculinity has consistently changed over history because masculinity itself is a social construct. So if you handcuff yourself to being a man according to what society tell you masculinity is, be prepared to be a different man if you're still alive 25 to 30 years from now, if you are so keen to the ideal of being masculine.
Yep. And so if you wanted to go to the France thing specifically, we can talk about wigs with inside the United States at the founding fathers, right? Because those were meant for a certain class of man, and the ones under that weren't able to get to that status, so they weren't able to do those. And same thing with powder in their face. That was a status symbol compared to, and so all men wanted to, but only a certain amount of men could. And
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely. I mean, that even comes all the way down to voting. Like there were only certain men in society that were allowed to vote. Even now, like of course we look at the beauty standards that is given for women, but there are also beauty standards for men. And even then, the men who uphold the beauty standards for other men, some of them don't even meet those requirements. So this whole idea that patriarchy gave masculinity to us, and for so long we never questioned, we're way behind. And it's about time that we start to decenter the idea of man that was given to us so that we can build something that works for more people.
Well, I think the most, you know, there's a great book, maybe you guys have read it, Iron John, and it kind of lays out the how it's a great book. It's a great book for men's work, but it's kind of like a mythic perspective on the development of the boy to man psyche. Um, but I was going to say that I think war is a big factor. I think big wars and military and the military industrial complex, trying to remove the empathy from humans, especially men, has led to a necessity to suppress emotions and all that trauma because there's no treatment. Well, there is treatment in a sense, but like I think of like World War One, even World War Two. It wasn't prioritized treatment, so it just created this culture of men just go through fucked up shit, tough shit, and they just deal with it. They just walk on, and that's traditional masculinity, and I'm sure y'all agree. Some sort of authentic masculinity is really what we're going after, where vulnerability can be a strength, honesty and all that.
well,
Power.
those are human traits, though. Those aren't masculine traits, and that's what. So, and that's why a lot of men don't like to play in those things. Like displaying that they might have mental health issues or physical immobilities, or anything that limits them from performing masculinity correctly, right? As a social construct, right? Having empathy for others, and war is a byproduct of people not being able to think logically. And when I say people, I mean men. So you've
They're
highlighted,
thinking logically about it. They are trying.
no,
It's a means to an ends logically in their head. It may be evil in our perspective and not make any sense to us, but the people that are orchestrating it, trust me, they're using their logic. You know what I mean?
See,
and their
if
logic
men,
a lot of humans at harm for the good of what they want, and that
there
so
we go.
therefore they're not thinking about it logically, they're thinking about it illogically, because they're not putting all of the people that will be unalived, all of the things that will be harmed, all of the people that will be torn apart, all of the buildings, the all of these types of things, they're not thinking about.
It's to say your moral good is logic, which is okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, their morals are not in line with human attributes of caring for others. And that's a problem with inside society, and that is a man-centered thing. Not saying that some women can't participate in that, but that's mostly men.
Right.
That's the problem that we have. So therefore, if you step on my toes, I'm going to cut yours off. That's war. That's war.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem.
So some of the things, and I think we kind of mentioned them just briefly. We sort of brushed over them. That defines masculinity the way that we currently know it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Some and just for everybody here, especially people in the comments, if you have a second device, or even if you own the device that you're using, you can look it up, hold me to task on this. Some of the things that define masculinity: stoicism, physical strength, dominance and leadership, competitiveness, rationality and logic is funny, but that's another one. Hetero, usually they're talking about heterosexual men. They don't include anybody else. This emphasis on being a provider and a protector, aggression and assertiveness, and individualism for the most part. Because as much as we like to talk about community, not many of us are truly active in community the way that community needs and that it deserves. So when you look at these things, especially something like stoicism, it really harms us. And then when you got stoicism connected to something like assertiveness or competitiveness, or you know, this idea that you're supposed to be this big, strong man, when you're trying to put all of these pieces together, and you're seeing now how life itself is changing, it leaves you mixed up in a way to where you consider self unaliving. And you don't consider it from something that people like to blame everything being feminism. You don't consider it from that. You're considering it from the way that they've given masculinity to you. And nobody explained to you that, hey, you don't have to do this. You can do what works for you.
Sure. Yeah, that takes a lot of deconstruction over time to realize what inside my own mind has been programmed there from past experiences and people in my ear and my life, and what feelings cause me to do certain habits that are from different traumas I've had. And once you can understand those things, feel through those things, then you're a lot less prone to make those types of decisions that would be in alignment with that programming. We're talking about shadow work, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think that society in itself, you said it would take a lot of work to deconstruct that inside of your mind, and
It
I think,
has, yeah.
yeah, I think that that's okay though. That's the work that we need because society
Absolutely.
needs us to be a certain way,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we have to realize that and do the work that we need to do so we don't continue to push a bad narrative onto others, right? If we're not breaking the generational curses, then that's a problem.
I just say it's a lot of work because it really is, you know? Like I've been doing this work for over 10 years and people are more afraid of what's a man is usually more afraid of what lives inside of himself than anything else in the world. About facing it and feeling what's inside himself, living inside him, that he's trying to ignore for so many years.
Yeah,
That's scarier. That's why it's some real work.
and to start with, this is what we need to do here on the background, right? We need to stop making decisions based on men. We need to be inside of our head and understand what pushed us to do things, what outside activities or influences have caused us to be a certain way, whether it's to an individual or a group of people, things of that nature, right? We have to break it down. And because we live inside of patriarchy, Love Tiffy just said that, like, we live inside of patriarchy, so therefore men inherently have more control of said markets and things. So that being the case, we need to have even more consideration about this because we're inflicting pain on others from us perpetuating these bad behaviors, and not just them, but it also comes back to us because we harm other men, men harm us, all of this type of thing. This is not community that we're building. We're just perpetuating different types of violence.
That's true. That is
You
true.
say the market? You say something about the market?
I mean, I may have said the market just in the fact of like, just exchanging each other, like the community itself, right? Not the stock market or anything of that nature. That's abusive in nature, also, though.
Okay, that's been in my. I've been now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know if there's anybody else that wants to join as far as the fella goes. If we want to rotate some folks out, or if it's just listeners in the bottom, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you're on this path and you're on this journey, and I think that we have a lot of common ground on it. Yeah,
A lot of what?
a lot of common ground.
Yeah, I mean, men really do need this work. They do need because they're going around react. So are women, though. That's the thing. Women need this work too.
Wait, that's not what we do here.
No,
That's
but I'm
not
just
what this is
saying,
about.
like,
No, and wait,
it's
wait.
human. Like you
I
said,
gotta cut you.
empathy
Look,
is.
wait. I gotta cut you off because I get what you're saying. I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
The only thing is when we're talking about men, we're talking about men. We don't do it at, oh, it's both sides. Oh, they do it too. I don't want to get into that because I have a philosophical, sociological way of explaining how that's
Mm-hmm.
not even true.
Oh,
And it's just not.
I
It's,
can explain my side, and I want you to disprove me. Can I make one analogy to kind of make my case, and then you go against it?
since no one else has come up yet,
All right.
I see what you got.
This is shadow work, in my opinion, is we have traumas, experiences, things in our lives we're unaware of. They're in our shadows. We haven't looked at it with our awareness, given it our full undivided attention without judging it. And so these things in our shadows, they're like poisons. They become poisons that corrode the inside of our minds until we have to face them or go crazy, truly. But once we do face them, they become medicines. Those same poisons heal us and give us perspectives and understandings and healing. And so that's a man and woman thing, and it's a beautiful thing. I don't say women need to do it too to get away from men need to do it, or to say, oh, men shouldn't do it because women need to do it. I'm saying, no, it's a beautiful path that I think every human being should at least consider going on, really facing what lives inside of you.
In that regard, and again, I had a feeling I knew where I was going, and it's okay. It's just when we're having these conversations, I don't like getting to the point of, oh, but women do it too, or oh, but women need to do it too, because I'm not even saying that for the most part that's a wrong idea. When we get to that level, we are inch by inch, little by little, taking the attention off men because we feel a need at some point to not feel alone in this. And although men are typically kind of individuals, like this sort of individualistic mind, if you will, there's something about men feeling the need to defend other men, and not so much defend them in terms of this is my brother, but there's this thing where we feel the need to defend the image of men rather than the actions of men. Men that we don't even know, and sometimes men that we probably won't even agree with.
Sure.
And in that instance, let's just bring it all back to where the conversation is, and just leave women out of these type of discussions.
Sure, because when I said empathy and you're like, oh, that's not a masculine thing, that's a human thing. I think we brought women in that moment. But
But see,
yeah,
that's the thing.
leave
I, I
women out.
love I love that you brought that up, because that's something that a lot of us don't tend to have as men. We don't tend to have that. Remember, one of the core tenets of masculinity is stoicism. And in stoicism, we suppress a lot of that stuff. Not a lot of us have emotional intelligence. And gentlemen, I can assure you, you can build upon your emotional intelligence. It's not something that you're just naturally born with as the individual that you're born into this world being, but you can build on your emotional intelligence. And from that emotional intelligence, you can develop things like empathy. But for the most part, the society that we live in, the way that it's given to us, it doesn't emphasize having that, especially for men anyway.
And that's why we got to create the spaces ourselves. It's a flaw in our society. We don't have spaces for men or women to heal.
So, well, you can extrapolate from that men need to do for other men, because if you're centering other men and their decisions and stuff like that, then the likelihood of you centering around men decisions that are problematic and bad in society is very high. If you're not doing the work inside of you, then you're not making good progress, right? If you're getting that work from individuals that aren't doing the work, or they're trying to brag, boast, whatever the case might be,
Right.
that's a problem.
Well, that's the thing.
Just wait, give me 1 second, see, because we're noticing some technical difficulties. Jeff, of course, we can hear you, but that same thing that happens is happening right now. You're frozen.
Yeah,
Yeah, as you refresh, I just do a few, to let people know to continue to tap the screen. If you will, of course, share it live, share it to people you like. I don't know, sometimes even go in there and click, what is it? Copy link, because the algorithm, it picks that up as well. But yeah, make sure you continue to tap the screen, share it live as well, so that we can hopefully get more gentlemen in to either join the conversation or sit in on it. What Jeff is dealing with right now, I'm kind of familiar with. When I host lives myself, the same thing happens. I don't see it happen to other people. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just an Alabama thing. They like picking on us.
Wi-Fi rough now.
Oh man.
So I don't look, man. I don't get it. It's happened to me a few times, and it happened to me at the most inopportune times, because sometimes I'm hosting my Quiet Storm lives. So just when people are in like the vibes of the song, everything just stop and freeze. The worst. So I'm trying to get in touch with like TikTok tech support or something to see why it keeps happening. It happens like every every hour maybe. So it's weird.
Okay.
There you go. You're back.
There we go. Well, I was saying,
Wait. You're frozen again.
just saying, in society, we don't really have those spaces delegated for healing, except for maybe therapy. But like, as far as men, saying in society, we don't really have those spaces delegated for healing, except for maybe therapy. But like, as far as men's, it should be really, because we need a space to talk about what's
You're back.
really going on.
No, I don't think you're wrong, but here's the thing about that talking point. That talking point is true, yes. But oftentimes what we find is, even like this very space we're hosting now, even when you're hosting these spaces and you're using, if the title isn't inflammatory at all or even close to it, you won't find many men to join that. As it stands, the American Psychological Association.org, that's the APA.org, as it speaks for Black American men, there's only about 26.4% of us who are willing to go to therapy, in comparison to white American men at a point of 45%. But here's the thing, those numbers go on a little bit further to explain that even if there were Black American men who wanted to go to therapy and they wanted to see a therapist who looks like themselves, which is understandable, it's still tough then because we only make up 3 to 4% at the doctoral level. So it is incumbent upon us to build some of these groups. I do something every Monday called Men's Mental Health Mondays, where I either post a video or I host a live or both. But when I post the videos or go live, the people in those spaces the most are women. and
Yeah,
and it's unfortunate.
yeah, I know. It's a stigma against men. Even if they see how good it's going for you and stuff. Like I said, it's the scariest thing a man can do is face what the feelings that he's avoiding within himself. Because childhood stuff. It leads back to their own childhood fears usually, and because it led back to mine. I went through them. I stopped. I finally faced my anger. I was like so many men. It's like, oh, I don't get angry. Yeah, because I avoided it and ignoring it. But that was a whole 2 years figuring out anger.
Yeah, well, I also just to go off of kind of what Jay was saying on the differences in between the stigmas around it and the demographics around it. Women are
Oh yeah.
typically fine, in emotional intelligence, understanding, empathy, all of these types of things, right? And to be honest, um, people sometimes when life experiences are kind of what you're talking about. I appreciate the live goal being knocked out. I appreciate that. Life experiences shape what we are, right? So at some point you can learn some empathy, but it's difficult to do. So as Jay has Mental Health Mondays and we're trying to hold more of these spaces like this, until we discuss it and have conversations about it, it's not going to get any better. It's not. The women have been calling and they've been hollering and they've been doing they've been doing as much as they can do, literally, right?
Yeah.
Like they've been trying, but
It's
without
the contradiction, though, because you can't force it. A lot of men are in this weird, stuck emotional position where the more you push them to show their emotion and be vulnerable, the less they want to do it. It's this weird, like, mechanism that's gone on, and I'm sure you're aware of that phenomenon that is occurring in men, where it's like the more you try to coax it out of them, if they think you're trying to coax it out of them, there's no way.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
Okay, well,
I'm sure
not necessarily man to man, but like man to woman sometimes. Yeah.
I don't agree with that because
Okay.
we know
I'm not saying all cases. I'm just saying the thing that happens to many men. But go ahead.
the likelihood of you coming across a woman that does not want you to display emotional vulnerability and understanding and empathy and care and concern about the situation at hand is going to be a lot slimmer than you're coming across a woman that wants those things. And you don't believe that? You don't believe women want us to be? You don't believe women like this live right now? That's what you're telling me?
Are you saying women want empathy less than they want no empathy?
They want empathy and they want understanding and they want emotionally intelligent men and they want men to show up and have humility and not try to force things to happen.
Some of them do. Some of them do. And the thing that's what I'm saying. Those ones that really want an emotional man or like emotionally intelligent man, they'll try to push a man to be that way. But the more they push a man to open up, a lot of men push against that.
So wait, you're speaking to something that's rather interesting.
You just can't force somebody to do their work, is all I'm saying.
No, and I get that, but you're speaking to something that's kind of interesting. For so long, women have been carrying the load of trying to get us to be more human rather than just man. So when a lady is trying to do that with a man that she's interested in, a man that she's dating, and he pushes against it, look, I ain't gonna even parse words. What I would say to that lady is, please leave, because there's something
Right.
happening there. That's and it's not me blaming her or anything. It's just please leave, because that is a person who's gonna need to work on that themselves. But it
Exactly.
speaks more to the fact that we are rejecting the idea of being just a human being. So I think Jeff and I have talked about this before. The idea of the lonely man epidemic,
Mhm.
right? And it's something that's growing. Psychology Today, there's an article in Psychology Today that talks about it. And there's this gentleman who hosts this show that's like a dating show. And he says one of the things with relationship standards, I'm just reading directly from the article. He says, with so many options, it's not surprising that women are increasingly selective today. He says he does a TikTok live show. Oh, a Better Love Project. I've heard of that before. He said he speaks with hundreds of audience members every week, and he hears the recurring dating themes from women between the ages of 25 and 45. They prefer men who are emotionally available, who are good communicators, and who share their values. And then he goes directly into the skill deficits that continues to grow this lonely man epidemic, because he says, for men, this means a relationship skills gap that, if not addressed, would likely lead to fewer dating opportunities and longer periods of being single. There's less patience for poor communication skills today. The problem for men is that emotional connection is the lifeblood of healthy, long-term love, and it requires all the skills that families still are not consistently teaching young boys. Think about the three things that they said they want there: emotional availability, good communicators, and someone who shares their values. These are very basic things. And the reason why I point that out specifically is because they're not saying, I need him to be 6 foot forever. I need him to have a 12 pack. I need him to be the wealthiest man in the world. They're not saying that.
Mhm.
They're saying, do you see me? And not my facial features, not my hair, not my clothes, any of that, but do you see me? And the reason why so many of us don't see them is because we don't see ourselves either.
Well, but attraction's the first, physical attraction in the moment is the first indicator for
That's
men and women. So, they'll find out if they're empathetic after they're attracted to them, I'm sure. Usually, not always, but
that's
generally.
that's what you want to lead back with after all of that.
No, we
But
can
wait,
talk.
Jeff, but see,
I
but
just
see,
went off the
Jeff, not
last
just
point
that,
he made. I
but
just
not
went off the
just that,
last thing he said.
I can guarantee you that there are more women who date and marry down in
Yeah.
terms of what people believe to be attractive or not attractive than there are men who do the same thing.
Yeah. So what you're saying is based on
Mhm.
attraction. That's a man mindset, is based on attraction. Women base
Okay.
things on these. Do you see me? Do you understand me? Are you trying to actively get better? Because they'll take a man that's inherently or that's not as misogynistic and work him up to that and work him into and get him there. And that's kind of what Jay was talking about earlier. If she goes to him and he does not want to listen to that first thing, then just dip, just leave, because you're not going to get where you want to be
Right.
at, because the building blocks aren't even there. And as a woman in a patriarch society, it's going to be difficult for her to change that man centering mindset. You see what I'm saying? Because he thinks that he is the provider, the he's the leader, he's all these types of things. And so
Well,
he's not looking at her as an equal person.
what about the women that want that, though?
That's
that want a provider and they want a protector and they want that like
That's the slimmest
that.
argument in 2024 that you can come up with. To be honest with you, that's so.
But
so
I'm describing my girlfriend, you know what I mean? Like, so what about those women? And they're on these they're on lives, like they're out here. So what about them?
You're the provider and the protector and the six pack and the six figures.
She's
And
way more. There's definitely a polarity of like she's way more feminine and I'm way more masculine, absolutely. And it shows in different ways
not a
financially.
provider and protector, sir.
No, it shows in financial ways and it shows in other ways.
Does she work?
Yeah, but because she wants to, she wants to have
You're
her
not a
own
provider,
money.
sir. You're not a provider. You're describing something that's not true. If she
So
worked,
look, she wants to work. That's the difference.
okay,
She
then
literally
she doesn't want a
wants.
provider and a protector. She wants someone in an equal relationship, is what it sounds like.
What I'm saying is that there are differences that she is more feminine and I'm more masculine. You know, those are pretty inherent in our
And
relationship.
that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. That's not what a protector and a provider traditional relationship is or based on.
But you don't agree that there's women that want that? That confuses me.
That's very, very slim. And if you look at all of the women that have gotten out of the Mormon relationships and things of that nature, then you'll see that it's brainwashing at the finest level.
But also, what I would challenge men to do is the idea that protection and providing, that the way it was given to us was very, very singular minded. For example, with providing, we only focus on the financial standpoint. With protection, we only focus on the physical. And the way I notice, especially for the physical, is they always give me this example of, well, what are you going to do when, somebody breaking your house at 3 a.m? Which, by the way, one, there's not that many break-ins, especially happening at 3 a.m. In fact, most break-ins happen during the day when they know ain't nobody going to be there. But two, we are a society that is in love with firearms. Not every man needs to be Incredible Hulk, but the idea that that man has to have this physical presence to be this protector is another thing that's holding men back, because they are internalizing that more so than women, especially today. Because women are telling men that, hey, I don't need you to be a bodyguard. Now, of course, I'm not expecting us to be out and somebody disrespects me, especially physically, and you just stand there. I'm not saying that either.
Right.
But
You ain't saying that either. So,
but see, the thing is, to open this up a little bit more, providing is more than financial. What else are you providing? Are you providing a safe space for her to come into? Are you
yes.
providing a listening ear when she
Yes.
just want to talk? Not somebody who want to give her answers, but when
Right.
she just want to talk. Are you providing the space that she feels comfortable in?
Yes.
Protection. Are you protecting her voice when she speaks to you that way? Are you protecting her feelings when she let them out to you? These things are things that we're not taught, that's not been given to us as boys to grow into men. So we only think about it from the physical and the financial, and we're failing at that.
Yeah, and,
It's
and
a
I would
great
also,
point.
and I would also. This took me a little while to understand. It's not just about protecting her voice, but it's about protecting the space that allows her to use her voice in this patriarchal society.
Yes, sir.
Let her speak for herself. Don't assume that you know best for her, and allow her to speak into the world, because she's a grown adult person that's capable and functioning and making all the decisions that you can make, and sometimes, most of the time, a lot more than you can make. Because the same way I won't speak for Jay about things of racism was inside the Deep South, even though Jay and I grew up 45 minutes apart, because
45 minutes.
he experiences things much differently than I do, even though we're right at the same age and grew up a stone's throw away. Because he is a black man living in the South, and the same thing, I'm not going to speak to her about things of misogyny and stuff like that, because she's got it and you're trying to protect her from something that she knows more about than you ever will. Don't tell her not to drive home by herself and not to go to certain places at night and stuff. She's been doing that her whole life. She's been doing that her whole life. You know.
Also, quickly, another thing, gentlemen, that we seem to be failing at across the board, we're falling behind in education. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about the fact that we're not going to universities or even community colleges. We're failing in just basic comprehension of things. But outside of that as well, we're failing even in the thing that we like to define ourselves as men when it comes to the financials. Did you know that presently there are more single women who own homes than single men? And if we're defining anything by wealth in the capitalistic society that we live in, we know how important land is. We know how important those things are. When people talk about the American dream, we know how important education is to be qualified, whether that be fortunately or unfortunately in this society. And still, with all of that, we're still having discussions of why are women who are just as skilled as the men that they're working next to not getting paid the same amount. So that's why when we start talking about women in these conversations, we need to make sure we're telling the whole truth. We need to make sure we're allowing all the nuance. We need to make sure that we are relying on facts with a lot of this stuff and not just feelings. I would rather talk to men about men to see what it is that somewhere we got an arrested development as men, period, in this society, and see how we can platform from that.
Correct. And and even to go on the most basic principles of what Jay's talking about and the protecting and the providing, I don't want to be equated to a protector and a provider for other individuals. I would love to make a society that doesn't need protection from, right? And
Yes, sir.
when you decenter other men and their behaviors that we already know is inherently toxic from society, and you're self-thinking and evaluating for yourself, now you're making a society that makes space for people that are vulnerable inside current society and making sure that they come to the table equitably. And then that way there's no protection that's needed. I don't want to have 8, 10, 12 people on my back to provide for. That would be so wild behavior for me, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I've not been married. Jay's been married, and he has a relationship that they've tossed around that providing for, right? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine doing all that on your own? Like a lot of men are, claiming to be, I'm the provider, the woman's, I'm providing for her on top of, you see what I'm saying? Like, that would be crazy.
And you know what, Jeff? Before I get to something that is very illuminating in the comments, and before we allow Seat to get back in here, I had to unlearn that.
Right.
Even in the marriage that I'm in, there was one point I was breaking my body down physically, trying to do all the work I could to provide for us. And it got to the point where I couldn't hide it anymore, where I had to take off this cape that I put on myself that nobody else told me to do. And when I broke down and couldn't move anymore, I was talking about all these things and talking about the need to do this and the need to do that. And my wife looked at me for what felt like an hour, but I'm pretty sure it was just a matter of seconds. She said, "Who told you you need to do that?" And I froze because I was like, wait a minute, who told me I need to do that? It's like, my parents didn't tell me I need to do that. Neither my mom nor my pops. My uncles, aunts, no, they didn't tell me I need to do that. And she was asking me that because she didn't tell me I needed to do that either. She said, if there's any point in this marriage where you feel like you need help in these things, we are married for a reason. Mm-hmm. You are carrying this load because you've made that up in your mind. Shit froze me. So, but quickly, wow. There was something that happened in the comments that was really interesting. There's somebody in the comments by the name of the other And there's somebody in the comments by the name of Andrea. The reason why I pointed that out is the other said, telling men they aren't good people is weird. However, directly underneath that, Andrea says, I've been holding my car key where I can jab my car key in someone's eye since I started driving.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that those comments are right there.
Right.
Look, when we're saying what we're saying, if you are internalizing that as an individual, there's one or two things happening. One, you are the person that we're talking about. And in this moment, you can't understand how we're able to see you. You can't understand how the spotlight ended up on you, even though we don't even know who you are. Or two, you are more concerned with defending the image of men rather than the actions. When we say things like this, we say that because according to the numbers, it unfortunately ranged true. The WHO, World Health Organization, not just numbers on America, that literally says 1 in 3 women are abused in some shape, form, or fashion by men. And oftentimes, that man is in the home that she dwells in.
Mm-hmm.
The other, I don't know you. None of us know you. We are very likely not talking about you. But you know, we are talking about a significant amount of men who are doing these things. And if we continue to dance very carefully around it, we're going to keep pushing this off to where we can't solve the problems.
Correct. And here's the kicker on top of that, what you're talking about with the 1 in 3, such as that, like, it takes a lot of us as men, and men know this from experience. There's some type of behavior that we've been around that we don't agree with to some degree, right? We're usually not the worst man in the room all the time in every scenario, right? But if we allow the worst man in the room for his voice to be heard, or even just some type of bad behavior, right? We're upholding that system of oppression such as that. We're allowing
100%.
to happen. So when we allow locker room talk to happen, when we allow misogynistic jokes to happen, when we allow racist behaviors to happen, even if it's just a joke, there is no joke that's funny when human rights are involved in that joke, right? There's just not. And so that's the thing. And if you self-identify as good, then you're not near about as good as what you think that you are.
Matter of fact, I go one further. If you say that you're a nice person, if you say that you're a nice man, here's the thing. I'm going to believe you. But on the other side, that's a bad thing. Mm-hmm. The reason why is this. Nice is performative. Correct. You are performing nice to receive something. Kind, K-I-N-D, kind is who you are. And if you are a kind person, you're not going around telling people you are a kind person. People either know or get that vibe sometimes that people are able to feel when they're in tune enough with themselves and their own emotional intelligence to say, oh, this is likely a kind person. Nice? Yeah. Nice is customer service. Because I can tell you welcome to Love's, and as soon as you walk by, I say, I wish you get the fuck up out of here. Because I don't want to be here either.
Nice are the people that that need to be fixing your food in front of you. They're nice, you know what I'm saying? Their job is to be nice. Their job, they can't be like, I'm fixing this ragged ass sandwich and get the hell out of my face. Like that we know that there's, not everyone comes across like that all the time, And so if you're performing something, it's different, right? It's your customer service voice. But anyway, we are in the chat on the Discord. And Seek, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, jumping back to something that Jay said earlier about what his wife said to him about, basically all of you is welcomed. You don't have to hold on so tightly and suppress all these emotions. You can just be yourself with me completely, something like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look, I don't mind sharing this because it's a part of my transparency and it's part of the reason why I do Men's Mental Health Mondays. I have a few diagnoses that I've had for a long time. I'm 38 now. When I was 16, I was diagnosed with a depression and anxiety problem. So much so to where I was taking medication. At the time, it's a medication called Paxil. And I can admit it worked. It was good. But I had something else at 16 that I didn't tell the specialist about because I didn't know how to talk about it, that I still have today. I have schizophrenia, specifically auditory hallucinations. The reason why I bring that up is because I put that pressure on myself to one point where I was admitted to the psychiatric hospital at UAB in Birmingham. Great hospital, by the way. Great, it's amazing hospital. I remember, and it wasn't voluntarily. So I got this phone call. They let me call my wife when I was there. And I remember being on the phone with her, trying to convince her to talk to the doctors to let me come home. Because in my home is where I feel is my force field. Like I'm here with my wife, I'm here with my kids. I rejuvenate enough here to go back out into the world. So that was my mindset. So after me running my mouth on the phone, trying to get her to convince them to let me go, she was like, I'm not going to do that. And she was like, I'm not going to do that because you are where you need to be in this moment. She said, I can't talk to you as long as I would like to in this moment, but I know you're where you need to be. And when I was let out, she was right. That's the most rest I had received in a long time since up to that point. Good rest, damn good rest. Rest that I didn't even know was possible as an adult. Is when you allow yourself, gentlemen, to be human, not just a man, to be human, when you decenter the idea of men that's been given to you by patriarchy and by patriarchy's offspring, masculinity, when you decenter yourself from those ideas to see yourself as a human being, you're going to naturally, I promise you're going to naturally not only attract the women that you're interested in, if you're interested in women, you're going to attract the people who need to be around you. That is the only way I was fortunate enough to meet this woman. The only way. And still to this day, I'm breaking down toxic masculinity parts about myself. Because one, I still think I have that 20-some-year-old body. I don't anymore. I don't. Jeff, I did something dumb last week. My knee popped out of place,
Uh-oh.
right? And it was at the most random moment. I was trying to climb in bed, and it just sort of slipped. It had been hurting all day.
Mm-hmm.
Keisha was in the bed. My wife was right there in the bed. And I've done this before, but what I did is I took my hands, did them like this. I leaned my knee against the wall and just knocked it back into place. She heard the snap and she was like, "What the hell are you doing?" That doesn't make any sense. Of course I got it done. That's good that I got it done, but I should be going to a doctor.
Right.
But the toxic part of me believes that I need to be this man, even if for nobody else, for myself. That doesn't make sense. So we got a lot to deconstruct, gentlemen. We got to do it.
We really do, and I swear that I've done my just went on the physicality part like what you're talking about. I swear every time that I've got that complete. Like I'm not that type of man anymore. I'm cool with it. Like the whole, and then something happens, and I'm like, I'm still that dude. I still got a lot of, I still, you know.
Right, man.
I've been working out for 15 years. I started working out when I was 20 on a
Right.
very regular basis. Right. I moved out of town. That's when I moved to Pascagoula and got a new job. I didn't know anybody in the town, and my family has a long line of bad behavior with medical conditions. Not overweight and stuff, but just my people drop like flies. I'm only related to 7 grown people. That's it. You know. Yeah. There's only 7 people that I'm related to, and that's aunts, uncles, first cousins,
Wow.
sisters, and 3 of them is my brother and 2 sisters out of 7. You know, so and
Wow.
my mom was one of 4, and my daddy was one of 3. So it ain't like there wasn't any of us to begin with, but a lot of us, you know, and
Yeah, yeah.
you know, so that being the case, that just speaks to like if you don't take care of yourself, you're not gonna win the foot race, right? So
You're not wrong.
so
Matter of fact,
I've got a way of thinking about this, and this applies with a lot of other things in life, right? So let's look at what I do is I look at in my very old age, and I want to say 100 years old. What do I want to be able to accomplish at that time as far as my
right.
physical conditioning? And then let's work backward from there all the way back to my 35-year-old self. What do I need to be doing today to ensure that at 45, at 55, at 65, all the way to 100, I can get there? Because we know that the body is going to decline and we're going to lose some stuff, right?
That's
So
true.
100, you need to be able to pick up 10 pounds. That means at 90, 20 pounds and vice versa, right? Within your framework of what's normal for your body, right?
Right.
But that also speaks into our mindsets and our emotional intelligence and things of that nature. At 100 years old, what do we want to be able to say that I accomplished? What did I deconstruct? What did I not push onto other people? What kind of traumas did I not? I worked them out. I unsewed that, and therefore I didn't have a mask on, and I passed that mask to someone else, right? And so that same thing happens. So if I want to be that person at 100, I need to be living my 35-year-old life in that manner, you know. And when I moved to that new town when I was 20, the very first electrician that I worked with was a guy named TJ Ray, and he was 68 at the time. That was in 2008. He was 68 years old, still on the job site, and he was a graduate of Tuskegee University. He
Yeah.
was a big. He was like 6'3" at 68. He was a ginormous dude, and he spoke to me with the softest, gentlest, um, you know, mindset, and taught me so much. He lived through a segregated South, and at the end of the day, like I want to be a 68, 78, 88-year old. Of course, I won't be TJ. I won't be I'm not gonna have melanin like that, right? Not Mr. Ray, but I want to be able to look back at the society that's been changed. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, I want to be able to look at back at what we've accomplished as a generation, as a group of men collectively together, of what we've moved past, and some of the things that held me back they're not holding someone else back, right? You know.
So to show you, see, Jeff, I'm trying to learn to take better care of myself. Taking these now.
Mm-hmm. There you go. There you go.
I I'm finally getting to the point where I'm taking vitamins. Which, by the way, I probably should have never stopped taking vitamins. We should have remained Flintstone kids, if we're being
Mm-hmm.
honest. But I'm getting to that point. She bought those, and she was like, "Yeah, this is what you're doing." Um, because
Yeah.
because I'm not gonna be in my late 60s and 70s and be here by myself because you think you're somebody's superhero. Um, Gentlemen, like we gotta again break these things down. Nobody directly told us to be these things. We just picked it up,
Well, my
and it's
dad
because of
did.
that we have to get out of it.
My dad was pretty direct about it, honestly. But
But see,
that's
no,
why,
and that's the thing. I don't disagree with that. I
right.
believe you
Some
on it,
people
and I
were
believe a
pretty
lot of other men
direct.
are like that too.
Yeah.
But their dads, their granddads, on all the way down, they were all told each other that. I don't think anybody came to them specifically at the beginning and said, "Hey, in order for you to be a man, you have to do all of these things on this checklist." We just picked it up naturally because society put those expectations on us.
I think from war and things like that, yeah, where trauma was so big a man couldn't deal with it, so he had to shut down, disassociate naturally, like any human. But men went to war, so men got hit by that wave.
Yeah. So
But it reminds me of my great grandfather. He lived in '94. He was an electrician, working till the last day of his life, and he passed away in his sleep when he got his Christmas bonus. And yeah, you can live a long time, be healthy. People that are getting older should start working out.
It's so. Remember earlier, I gave you three options of
Yeah.
the relationships, decentering the relationships, decentering in the workplace, decentering in culture and media, just to make sure I don't leave the people who's been here the entire time hanging on this. When I'm thinking about decentering in relationships, from what I took down today, decentering men in relationships on emotional labor, the equal partnership, and listening to their partners rather than assuming a leadership or dominant role. Men, you aren't born to be leaders like that. Nobody is just innate a leader. And you're certainly not that because of what you were born with. Like there may be a relationship that you end up in that turns into a marriage one day that you may not be the quote unquote leader in. And that's okay. You don't always have to be that. But understanding your position, understanding you guys' position together is far more important than you saying, I'm man, I'm leader. We have to decenter those ideas.
Well, we should deconstruct what a leader is because I think our culture has leader completely backwards. I don't even think what we consider a leader is true leadership in this culture anyway. There's a
well,
lot to go down on that path.
well, you're upholding the system yourself,
As a,
because you started this. You said at one point about a protector and a provider, but you have a girlfriend that works, and defining that is that's just not what that is at all, right?
no, I said, what does a woman want? And she wants that. That's
Oh,
what,
wait. See, hold on to that. I want you to put a pin in that. This is one of my favorite points to bring up that Andrea made in the comments. And I love to tell people about this to people who hadn't heard it before. Andrea said, and the idea of the alpha man is false. 100% correct. There's no such thing as an alpha man. There's not a beta man, sigma man, none of that. Where you get that idea from is a scientist by the name of L. David Mech. That's Mech. And what he was doing was studying wolves. And he came back, he wrote a book to suggest that there's an alpha male among the wolves, among the pack that leads the pack, right? And when he wrote this book, people consumed it and made their lives around it, specifically men. But like any good scientist, he continued his work. He went back and he was like, "Oh, wait, I was woefully wrong. That doesn't exist." That oftentimes within the pack, they would trade positions from leading, being in the middle, being in the back, depending on who can do what, depending on who has the energy, basically. And when he came back to tell people, "Hey, my first book was wrong. Don't, my bad about that." Most of the people who then made their lives about it was like, "Oh, nah, I'm an alpha male. Ain't nothing you can tell me." The idea doesn't exist. The person who gave it to you told you it was wrong. It's not a real thing.
100%, 100%. There is somebody in the request. Seek, do you want to step out? Do you have any last closing remarks that you want to say?
the last thing I would say is just that, like I said, leadership is backwards. I think real leadership has more to do with how much you can give to the people than how much you can acquire. I think it has a lot more to do with service, has a lot more to do with integrity and honesty commitment to community, serving something greater than yourself, and not seeking status or recognition in any way, but naturally being recognized by a community for your good works. I think that's how real leaders are brought up, but we don't see that in our culture very often. That's kind of the last thing I'd say in general. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming up. If you wanna follow and stick around, then we'll definitely be having these conversations some more. All right.
Right on.
Thank you.
Good to meet you all.
Peace, brother. So before anybody else comes up real quick, I just give me a moment to brag on my wife again.
Okay.
Because the picture, what y'all are seeing in the back is something that she created previously. Hold up, let me get it closer. This is what she did.
Mm-hmm.
The detail of it, the watching her create it was dope itself. I think she's gonna sell it, but I told her whoever's interested in it, they're gonna have to match me on it because I'm willing to pay for it also. So because I love it that much. But yeah, look, anytime I'm anywhere and this is in the background, I just make sure to let people know where it comes from. That lady is amazing.
Right. Well, I think that from what I understand on y'all's relationship, it might not be traditional. It might be traditional. However, I don't care about putting a label on it. But what y'all both do, I think, is just bring equity into it and understanding. Listening to each other. And I think that a lot of us men would do better. Kind of like what you were saying before about listening to, giving her autonomy to have thoughts about the relationship instead of saying I'm the leader of the relationship, therefore
Right.
take us. Because a lot of times we as men take us down into the ditches. That's what
Oh,
we.
oh yes.
Yeah. So
But I think you bring up a good point because I don't think we see ourselves as quote unquote traditional, if you will. And I mean, there's nothing traditional for the most part about this. We met on Facebook in 2009, and neither one of us were looking for a relationship. We we wanted what we wanted that first night we met. That was really all it was supposed to be. But but over the next few days, and that's what both of us wanted. Like it wasn't just me or just her. Over the next few days, it was like, yo, you're actually a really dope person to be around. Like you're cool. Like let's just kick it. The night that I realized that it was more than what we set out for it to be, I picked her up from campus. She came back to my place. We fell asleep.
hmm
That was it. Because I was exhausted.
right.
And I got up and I was like, wait, we didn't do anything. We just, so you know what? We'll talk about it tomorrow. I'm going back to sleep. Um, but just quickly, she had one of those moments in our marriage that I was talking about earlier, where both of us were working. And we get to the evening part where we're doing like the evening routines, helping out like, homework and all of that stuff. And she was cooking.
hmm
And I walked in the kitchen and she was crying. And the first thing I'm thinking is like, oh shit, what did I do? It's like I did something. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to approach with caution. And what I learned is she was tired. She was exhausted. And in that conversation, what she revealed to me is she didn't know that she could say, as a mother, as a wife, that she was tired. And what I felt in that moment was shame because it was like, damn, did I set the standard for this to be that way? Only for us to have a longer conversation, say, no, you never said that. You never said you expected that. You never said you wanted that. This is something that I felt that I had to be. And I was like, yo, one, we need to communicate better on that. But two, just whatever you're cooking, I could cook. I can get down in that kitchen. Whatever you're cleaning, I could do. My parents literally own their own cleaning service. I know how to clean like a professional. Homework, I'm good at it, especially if it's English or history. We share everything here. There's no one over the other. And I think that's not only important for us, but it's important for our three daughters and our son to see, so that they see that their parents treated each other like equal human beings. So that if I decide to get involved with anybody romantically in my future, it's gonna have to be that way.
Right, right, right. Well, humanize all of it, right? And that's what I think that we, our generation, I think, was one of the last generations that predominantly was raised in a very gender specific way, right? The boys were getting tools and all of those types of things and Legos and stuff, and over since our time of being small children to the small children of today, we have more gender neutral things. We have more feminine style play sets like Lego sets. We have more cooking things that are also geared towards boys and such as that. There's a lot more. I know there's a lot more young men with longer hair, young boys with longer hair. Mothers are allowing that to happen, right? And it's so beautiful to see. And I always point towards, and not saying that no matter what your child plays with will determine their sexual orientation. You muted, Jay. Yeah, but the LGBTQI plus community has doubled in the last 15 years, and it's not because the community themselves have doubled. It's just that the people inside the community are better at displaying who they actually are publicly. Absolutely. Without shame and ridicule and such as that. And that is a much better society than it was 40, 50, 60 years ago, right? Absolutely. When someone can walk around and be themselves, that's what I do every day. You know what I mean? And that's what a lot of men do every day. But that's not what everyone does. That's not what minority groups or the global majority, people of color, or women do, depending on where they're at. And so that's a problem with society, right? We've constructed a way that is oppressive in nature.
It's interesting how we've seen the voices of LGBTQ plus people be amplified over the years, because there was a video I seen some time ago of an older gay man who was saying that in his time there was a way that you had to look for signs to make sure. Like he was like, if you wore this colored tie, or if you looked a little bit too long at this suit, then I know if I could stand next to you. And it's like to have to navigate that way in society, just from who you are naturally, to find some sort of meaning or enjoyment with another person. Man, that's crazy. I can't I can't imagine having to tiptoe around life from something that you should be able to enjoy as something natural as human beings themselves. And you're right. It's not that there are more people of the community today than there ever was. It's just, fortunately enough, and we still got a ways to go. Fortunately enough, we have gotten at least to a point in society where they don't have to hide anymore. It shouldn't have never been that way. But the fact that we're here now, I think we should just keep running in this direction, this direction of progression. I think is important. And I love the point that you made about no matter what your kids play with, right, is not going to affect who they are and who they may be interested in. Because there was a wild conversation a while ago about people not wanting to buy their sons a kitchen set. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I was like, but wait a minute, isn't like most of the top chefs, at least in this country, men?
Right. That shows two dynamics, though. That shows the misogynistic behavior of individual people, but that also shows the patriarchy wild at work, because probably there's some great women cooks that are like top top of the line, but they just don't get promoted because they're
There we
women.
go.
You know,
There we go.
it's like you're fighting both ends of the battle here. But kind of what you were talking about with like LGBTQIA plus people not being able to express themselves. Those are a lot of the difficult conversations that I had with Mr. Ray when I was 20, and the way that he was talking about what he was and wasn't able to do, where he was and wasn't able to go, things of that nature. And he was in between here and South Carolina as a young man, and like I said, and he just humanized a lot of experiences that I'd read about, right, and I'd heard about, right, but I worked with him for 40 hours a week for 6 months. Every day it was he and I together. We were toting. I was toting his tools, and such. We were working hand in hand all the time. And when you get the opportunity to do that from someone that's come from there to where they're at now, you get to see just the difference in between how privileged that not only I am in my non-melanated skin, but how beautiful it is that we live in 2024 instead of 1924.
Right. Right.
Because I would be left out of society, right? Because I came from brokenness in general, right?
Right.
I would be stepped over in a lot of different ways, but there would be a lot more people that would subjugate it to harm with inside of this men centering other men and thinking about other men ideas and upholding these ideals that we just simply don't need and don't serve a greater good, right? And I think the more that we break those things down, the better off we're going to be as a society, right? The reason why, the reason why barbers are called barbers even when they're women is because women used to not be able to touch men in public like that. As a law, you couldn't touch them. You know what I'm saying? You couldn't shave a man's head. That's a crazy law to have. And that was 100 years ago. That was not that long ago. It was even at home, if you couldn't afford to go to the barber, it was shameful for a woman to shave or cut a man's hair. Because she was looked at. Usually, it was the daughter, and she was looked at as now unpure because she had touched a grown man in an intimate way. And we just can't. A lot of things that we do now are kind of reminiscent of that older system. We just don't even pay attention to it. And that's what we really have to separate those types of things. We just
Absolutely.
The reason why all the women not driving jokes is because if women drove, that means they could leave the house. And so we keep making these woman jokes about not being able to drive. That's misogyny. That's the patriarchy hard at work.
And that's the thing. Like I get that there are people who especially frequent these spaces. They are to a degree tired of hearing that word. The only thing that I can tell you is if you're tired of hearing that word, I want you to imagine at least the women who not only know what the word means, but know how the actions are set forward in their day-to-day because of the society that they live in. I want you to imagine how tired they are of existing in it. A lot of you, unfortunately, have just gotten to the point of hearing that word, have just gotten to the point of having people define that word and show you examples of how it exists. There are women since the beginning of time who've had to live in it, to not be seen as priority in it, no matter what it is they do, no matter what it is they say, no matter what it is that they know. Mary Lincoln, the wife of Abraham Lincoln, was said at least to be a very smart woman, but because of the grief, of course, of what happened to her husband and the way that the grief manifested itself after he was unalived, they ultimately put her in a psychiatric hospital. And that time was filled with women being taken to those facilities just for having original thought.
Right.
The Salem witch trials were literally women who didn't conform to society, not because they had any special abilities, but I don't know, like the one lady who didn't want to give her land to her sons, which was customary after the man of the house was no longer there. She decided to not remarry, and when her boys came of age, she was like, "No, I have been doing this. Of course, you boys have been helping me, but this is mine." And she was one of the victims of those witch trials.
Right. Yeah, they didn't.
This,
They didn't hang witches. They hung women. They
there
hung
it is.
women that couldn't convince. Right. That didn't follow the system, and that's something that I mean, Thomas Jefferson's wife had lengthy discussions with him about women having the vote, you know,
Hmm.
before the Declaration of Independence was written. So women have been on this battle for a long, long time, right? And there were many people then. Some of the wording that is very specific to the Constitution in a way that makes it where slavery was still legal,
Right,
because but there were people that were opposed to that wording being in there in that way. People have been on this fight and been on this trial for a long time. This is nothing new.
very long time.
But we've made progress, right? We want to highlight that we've made progress, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that we're done. And
Oh, by no means.
that kind of highlights back to our good man, right? A good if you're saying you're a good man, then that means you're done. And that in
Hmm.
itself, that's adequately false, because if you're good, you're done. You're good enough, right? That's what you're
Right,
saying. So, in my eyes, when you identify yourself as a good man, that means I'm not doing any more work. I've done enough work.
right,
I've done enough to operate within inside this society, and that's where I'm going to stop it at.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. And I think one of the things that I would love for gentlemen to understand in decentering men is understanding feminism a little bit better. Because the way that it's been given to a lot of us, for the most part, it hasn't been explained, and it's been assumed to be the idea that women are, that the majority of women, especially who believe in feminism, and there's a bunch of different branches of feminism, by the way, there's so many of them,
Mm.
it's the belief that women would do to men what men have historically done to women. While when you look at something like intersectionality, for example, intersectional feminism was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, if I'm not mistaken, in the late 70s or mid 80s. And the idea, to condense it, but I would love for people who haven't heard it before to get a bit deeper in it. And I only really got into it within close to about the last 10 years, which is late. Should have been there. It's the idea that we all meet at an intersection or more in society. And when you can understand that we all exist in these various intersections and
Mhm.
how it matters when you look at the people, when you look at each group of people in society and where they stand in society because of who they were born as, specifically around race or something around disabilities, whether it be disabilities you can see or the ones that you can't see, whether you are straight or a part of the LGBTQ plus community, all of these things. When you look through all of these things and see the intersections that you cross in, you should be able to treat people more like humans rather than that's a woman and that's a man and that's a child. They're far more than that
Right. Right.
because you should be able to see how you cross these intersections.
100%. 100%. And that was my first WPS video about when
Oh, awesome.
people that look like me tell people that look like you, like I don't see color. That's disingenuous and
Oh,
offensive
that's
right off the bat.
dangerous.
Right off the bat. So what you're doing is you're discounting the life that this person's lived to stand in front of you today, you know, and when you boil it all down to man or woman, you know,
Right.
then you're taking out all of the lived experiences and everything that's molded them to be the person that they are today.
Thank you.
That in itself is harmful behavior because we're not a man and we're not a woman. We're a vast majority. There's a whole spectrum. It's not binary. And
Yes.
the more that we learn that things aren't just on or off one way or the other, Democrat or Republican, like there's an entire spectrum of all of these different systems. But the American psyche has been pushed into the narrative of yes or no, left or right, blue or red, man or woman, you know, and you have to make these decisions, car or truck. There's no in between. There's no in between. And as soon as you start thinking about a bigger picture than that, employed
Right.
or unemployed, you know,
Absolutely.
working or retired. That's it. There's no in between. As soon as
Absolutely.
you break free of those types of things, then you can really start exploring and how you interact with society in ways that are good and of course bad, and how you can remedy some of those things because of that, right? Because we're not thinking in such a binary way anymore. So
Right. And I think that's one of the things with, because when we talk about patriarchy, the thing that I like to make people understand is it affects everyone. You're only benefiting from it if you, and we bring up intersections again, you only benefit from it if you are straight, YT, Christian, wealthy man. You are at the top, whether you ask for it or not. That's where you are.
but,
And the more you go down that list, the more these things drop off. Whether you are not YT, or whether you're not straight, or whether you're not wealthy, all of these things, whatever drop off of your list, the further down this ladder you fall on patriarchy. And with that, you have to understand that even though it was set up by men with the idea for men, it doesn't benefit all men. It does far more harm than it does good. And even the harm that it does to men is worse for women. If you get to the point where you can understand what it does to you, and you understand that it was made by men and made for men, then it shouldn't be hard for you to continue down that, and not even just women, but kids as well.
right, and that's yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And to be honest with you, I know this is a selfish way of thinking about it, but sometimes I think about things like what you're saying right now in the manner of that of I can never go back and fix my childhood, right? I just can't. I can't do that. But what I can do is I can try to help a system not to disenfranchise little boys like that anymore, right?
Right.
And
Right.
looking at some people's life and scenario and situation, I had a lot of things that were good, but looking at society in general, I was still at the very very bottom of what we are capable as a critically thinking society and empathetic in nature. I shouldn't have been where I was, and so that being the case, many more people shouldn't be where I was at, right? And
Right.
drive down Highway 80, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, you come on now,
Yeah. I don't know if you know
my
that.
neck of the woods.
Yeah. So there's a young man that started following me from DMOC last week, and we had a conversation.
Come on,
I was
man.
there. Yeah.
That's where my truck at. That's where I have to go to in the morning to pick up my truck to go get loaded and all of that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But,
It's so a few things that I want to get to, because I don't know when we're going to end, because I took down copious notes on this.
yeah.
One of the things you mentioned about your childhood is that we can't change it, of course. But one of the things that I mentioned in my Men's Mental Health Mondays 1 week, I was talking about mindfulness and the importance of it. Some of the mindfulness tools that I gave was journaling, breathing exercises, specifically the 444 technique, and meditation. These are all things that I do on a regular. And just recently, the one of the cliche things they try to get you to do in therapy and meditation is get in touch with your inner child.
Mm-hmm.
Please make sure you're ready for that. I I was not ready, and I haven't revisited them yet. I've seen them, and when I say this, let me just be as open as I can. But when I say I've seen them, I've seen the adolescent version of myself, and I've seen the teenage version of myself. The adolescent version of myself is very innocent, of course, for the most part, and during the meditation, because I've been meditating now for, oh wow, it's been at least probably about 7, 8 years now. So it's gotten to the point where I don't necessarily have to be sitting in stone silence and in this special room. Like, no, I know how to crank it up when I need to. But that adolescent version is so innocent that when I look at the teenage version of myself that wanted to fit in, that was hit with these new hormones while trying to keep up with classwork, while trying to keep up with other things like what I thought was social responsibilities and chores and stuff. Contrasting the two and seeing and knowing who I am as an adult, it broke me, man. I was messed up for a couple days because when you've done enough work on yourself, there's a level of understanding that you not only have about yourself, but you have about your surroundings, and that you have about your past, and that you hope for your future. And when you have this level of understanding and you start to think about just how far you've come along to get the way you are, there are some regrets, and they're natural because you're a human being. I didn't know what to say to neither one of them. I just looked at them and I sobbed because I'm sorry that my adolescent version couldn't keep more of that innocence. And I'm sorry that for my teenage version of myself, we didn't get a chance to figure out who we were without trying to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt in that moment that I had robbed both of them of an opportunity.
Right.
And the teenage version of myself made it worse because he thought he was making it better because he kept telling me it's okay. Because I remember being that as a as a teenager, where I was trying to make sure everybody around me was okay, even if I wasn't. I'm gonna revisit them one day, but I'm not ready to go back there yet.
Right. Right.
So, gentlemen, get into that mindfulness, man. You got to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'll close on those steps right there because no matter where you're at or where you're going to go or where you're trying to get to, investing in yourself into the way that you interact with the world will never pay you a net loss on dividends. It'll never do that. It'll never do that. The time will pass. And so you can be looking at yourself in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and you can be in the same place with your mindfulness, with your expressions, with your own inner log and monologue of how you interact and show up for yourself every day. You can be in the same place, or or you can be in a place that's actually showing up for you. And if when you show up for you, not for other men, then you can interact with society how you want. You can show up for your children. You can show up for your significant other, right? But you have to show up for you first. And that's the whole topic of the decentering other men, right? Because we have to serve our inside. We have to serve that vulnerable child that never got whatever it was that they needed. That teenager that was trying to show out, right? That young adult male that came up in society and society pushed the rhetoric of you needed to have a G-Wagon and 100,000 and all these types of things, and you
Right.
didn't. You didn't. You had a Honda Civic, and you were like, "What's the deal?"
Yeah, man. Or Pontiac Bonneville.
Yeah, or a Bonneville, or a Grand Prix, or whatever the case might be.
Hey,
You may have had a big L dog. I don't know what you had, but what I'm telling you
man.
is society told you you probably needed something different than what you had, right? You needed to have, the 400 thread count polo shirts, right? You needed to have all
Yeah,
this type
man.
of stuff, and we just didn't. A majority of us didn't, and
That's true.
so we have to go back and heal that person, right? We have to. Uh,
Right. One last thing I say is this, so that we can definitely get out of here, because again, and I would love to run this back the next time we try to do it, or if we get on a different topic, because a part of the notes that I took is I wanted to look at decentering from a psychological standpoint, a philosophical standpoint, and a in sociology. What I got down for the psychological standpoint was when men are decentering themselves, it would involve shifting the self concept away from patriarchal ideas, focusing instead on a more holistic, non gendered trait like empathy, like collaboration, like emotional intelligence. That's from a psychological standpoint. From a philosophical standpoint, is more so on existentialism philosophy, where it focus a lot, of course, on yourself. And with that, it would be, let me see, where is it? I want to make sure. There it is. So, power, in a philosophical standpoint of men decentering themselves, it isn't just top down, but it's diffused throughout society. Men decentering themselves philosophically can be seen as a way of dismantling the invisible power structures that are often sometimes very visible that perpetuate male dominance. It perpetuates control in various societal domains, like, whether it be workplace or family or politics. And lastly, from a sociological standpoint, it was what we were talking about specifically earlier with intersectionality, but also changing gender norms. Because from this standpoint, norms change over time. Like I was saying at the very beginning, through a collective action of shifts in culture. So encouraging men, to me, to descend collective action of shifts in culture. So encouraging men, to me, to decenter towards more egalitarian models. And part in societal roles like that. So those are just three that I was pulling out there. So with that, hopefully we come back to this or we come back to another topic. But yes, men, decenter the idea, center yourself. And here's the thing, when you center yourself, you're not going to become this individual who only cares about self. Because if you censor yourself enough to see yourself as a human being, you can see everybody else as humans too.
Yep, 100%. I like that. Yeah, we could run this topic back the next time we do this same type of live on the same. I might change some of the lower points again, but definitely we can run this topic back. I appreciate everyone being here, and having the conversation, listening in. This is something that Jay and I are going to try to do a little bit more, um, and because we see enough of there's a problem, we need to try to give the words and substance around trying to substantiate that problem into actual work that creates equity within inside society, right? And I think that that's what we've accomplished here tonight. For anyone that's interested, I'm going to I'm not going to clip this. I'm going to put this whole thing on YouTube. If you go to my uh, profile here on TikTok, it'll have a link tree with a YouTube link. I need 10 more subscribers in order to go live on YouTube also. I'm going to do that, but until then, I'm just going to be posting YouTube shorts and YouTube videos, and then that way, anyone that wants to go back and go through any of these things that we've talked about, it's documented, so you can go back and listen again, or any of that you want to digest one more time, right? So with that, I'm gonna sign off. Jay, man, I appreciate it. It's always wonderful having a great conversation with you.
Always, brother.
Always take it easy.
Peace.